Welcome to Talk About It Tuesday. It is still October, so we are continuing to cover domestic violence topics. And today I'm going to be talking to you about economic abuse. When we use the terms domestic violence awareness, for there to be an abusive relationship, it does not necessarily have to be physically violent in nature. And some perpetrators will use other methods in their toxic relationships to abuse their victim or their intimate partner. It's not always physical. So for Talk About It Tuesday today, we're going to be talking about economic abuse. Now, before I get into that, I'm not saying that economic abuse is a standalone where there's either physical or economic, because 94 to 99% of cases that have been physically violent have included some form of economic abuse. But there are some situations where economic abuse is the primary method of abuse. So we'll be covering that today. And it's not readily noticeable for folks that might be looking into a relationship from the outside. And I even have to disclose, as a therapist, there was one individual who was going over the struggles that she was having, and it wasn't until I was typing up my case note that it dawned to me, like, wait, what just happened? And I started realizing that she was caught up in an abusive relationship because of what she was talking about regarding financial abuse. So what does that look like? So basically there are several different kinds of economic abuse, but one in particular is employment related abuse. And I have to make the cautionary statement that if someone is keeping you or not wanting you to take a specific job or things of that nature, it doesn't necessarily mean the relationship is abusive. We're talking about these behaviors in the context of an abusive relationship. So this is economic abuse, is where someone is trying to maintain control over the finances by withholding access to money, preventing a victim or survivor from working or attending school, and this is an effort for them to create financial dependence so that they can maintain control as the abuser. So a lot of folks who are being abused are forced between staying in an abusive relationship or choosing poverty because they may not have the credit to obtain an apartment on their own, and so on and so forth. So the first one that we were talking about is employment related abuse, where someone is preventing them from keeping a job or from even getting a job in the first place, and someone who might be sabotaging actively their current employment. One of the things that I saw in practice was a spouse who manipulated the alarm clock so that this person couldn't wake up on time to get to work. So that's just a very small example of how that might work. It could be also phone calls that are called in at work, or unsolicited or unannounced visits from the perpetrator, which could lead the victim to being fired. So this is also something that I wanted to cover today because we are nearing the end of our virtual employment fair. And sometimes these abusers also will either want to shape their intimate partner's thoughts by getting them to believe that they can't amount to anything, and they therefore should not apply for the job that is commensurate with their knowledge, skills, and abilities. So one of the things that victims can do is start challenging their thinking and believing that they actually can fulfill the role of the job that they're wanting to apply for. And if you need assistance with that, again, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is available to speak with you. You may not be in imminent danger, but they do have a lot of tips and resources for you. And that number is 800-799-SAFE or 7233. Another form of economic abuse is when this abuser will prevent the victim from accessing existing funds. So they're controlling how much cash they can get out, or when they're allowed to use a bank account or a credit card, or demanding that the perpetrator's name is the only name that is on a lease or a mortgage, or things of that nature. So it's really something that when you are working with someone who might be talking about their relationship, that you start seeing or hearing the red flags of how it might very well be an abusive relationship. The other one is coerced debt. And remember that we're talking about this being in the context of an abusive relationship, because one of the forms of coerced debt is opening accounts without the victim's knowledge. And we all know that a lot of us are guilty of opening credit cards or other accounts without our partner knowing, but that's not necessarily abuse, but again, it's in the context of abuse. If this is someone who is opening these accounts without the victim knowing as a way to coerce them or to maintain power and control, then that is when it is classified as economic abuse. So this is non-consensual credit-related transactions or opening of accounts, destroying the victim's credit rating so that they either can't get a job or an apartment if they chose to leave, and those types of things. They might even refinance a home mortgage or a car loan without the victim knowing that. And then when they actually go through or follow through with a divorce, they may have signed paperwork that they weren't even aware they were signing, and then later the court decree shows that maybe they have nothing from this relationship. So that's a form of abuse. And there are other forms of economic abuse as well, as refusing to pay court-ordered child support or alimony. And that's something too that company commanders, first sergeants should be aware of. When you have a recruiter, or even it may not be a recruiter, it might be a spouse of a recruiter who is not following through with a court decree or court-ordered actions, that could be a form of economic abuse. And it also could require, the victim might be required to provide justification for any amount of money that they're spending, making them feel shameful for even buying a cart full of groceries or providing for their children's needs. And something that I've seen in practice is, someone's dropping $300 at Walmart for groceries, for their children's underwear, for their children's toiletries. And, it all adds up. We've all been there. And then them having to justify why they spent $300. But, a lot of these victims would come back and say, listen, it was underwear, it was toothbrushes, it was those types of things. If I would like to have fun with the money, I would have done something else with it. So again, they're being forced to feel shameful just for meeting basic needs within the home. So if you know someone who is going through this, or if you yourself are going through this, I would encourage you to call that National Domestic Violence Hotline. Again, the number is 800-799-SAFE or 7233. If you are a bystander and you're wanting to do something about this, please be very careful with how you go about that, because any action that you take without the victim's awareness could create more problems for that victim, and it might very well be unsafe for that victim, and they may have to pay the price for someone trying to intervene. So when you call the National Domestic Violence Hotline, they're going to go over with a friend or an innocent bystander or anyone in their periphery to help. They're going to give you some ideas, because a safety plan might need to be put into place. And they can also give you some pointers on how to speak with a victim, because I know that we all get frustrated when someone chooses to remain in a toxic, abusive, or unhealthy relationship, but they can give you some pointers on that. The last thing that I'm going to say, and something that I have seen recently and has just really boomed within the abusive world, is when the perpetrators will repeatedly file costly lawsuits that they know that their victim could not afford to have legal representation at the level that they have. So keep a lookout for that. Keep your eyes and your ears open. And if you witness that, you see that, again, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is available for onlookers and folks who are actually going through it. But you also have me, your Family Advocacy Program Coordinator, if you need to just talk about some things that you may have seen within the brigade or within your company, and you're wanting to just have a chat about it and just another look-see, don't hesitate to give me a call either. And if it needs to go to the next level, I will remind you of the resources that are available to you. So really a sad topic on this Talk About It Tuesday, but something that absolutely needs to be discussed. And so I will see you next Tuesday with hopefully a more uplifting topic.